Hello and welcome to Schlock Tactics, the movie podcast where we believe badder is better and aim to review the insufferable superhero suckfests so that you don't have to. My name is Ash and I'm joined by Mark. Oh, hi Mark.
Hi there.
Have you seen any good movies lately?
No, of course not.
Great. Then we can move on. Obviously, you may have noticed we did launch recently the podcast and we released 3 episodes, all in one whack pretty much, all in one weekend, and we just want to thank everyone that's listened to the podcast, everyone that's gone back to us on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook to let us know that they enjoyed it. We do appreciate that and we appreciate that you are out there listening, so continue to do that, continue to let us know and continue to rate us on iTunes. But today we are going to be reviewing 2 superhero films. We're moving away from the horror and the B-movie stuff we've done in the last couple of episodes, and we're going to go a slightly different direction. We're going to review Supergirl from 1984 and Catwoman from 2004. Now, just in case you're thinking that we're picking on the girls here, we're not. These are 2 films that really came out long before the current trend for superhero films, and nowadays you can't turn around without bumping into a superhero film, particularly a superhero film based on someone you've never heard of. So we thought we'd go back and review 2 early attempts to spin off superhero characters from existing universes to varying levels of success. But nowadays it's pretty commonplace to pick any old Tom, Dick and Harry from a comic book and give them a film, and it does pretty well. But these 2 films didn't do very well, so that's why we want to review these. First of all, we're going to get into Supergirl from 1984, of course a spin-off of Superman, and most notably the Christopher Reeve-based Superman films from the late 70s and early 80s. What were your first impressions of Supergirl that we've watched here, Mark?
The effects were even tackier than I was expecting them to be.
Really?
Yes. It was very sort of fantasy in your face from the very start. The names, objects as well.
Had you seen any of the Christopher Reeve Superman films?
I've seen the original.
Yeah. I think I've seen bits and bobs when I was a kid, but
yeah,
I can't remember too much about it other than there were sort of people using weird big words, and that was kind of carried through to this one. It's established in this film that Supergirl is the cousin of Superman, who doesn't appear in this film. It actually, right at the beginning, I don't know if you noticed, there is a car radio that says that Superman is on a peacekeeping mission to another planet. And the translation is Christopher Reeve didn't want anything to do with this film. He was not going to be appearing in the film, and despite many references to Superman throughout the film, you do not get Christopher Reeve in this film. So I want to warn people, if you're checking this out based on the Superman films, you won't get Superman.
Don't get excited.
No. You will get Supergirl. Kind of similar. Quite a strong cast, I would say, actually, of actors in this one. There's Faye Dunaway, who plays the sort of mystical Selena character.
Yeah.
Her partner, Nigel, who's played by Peter Cook. And then you even get Peter O'Toole as well, playing a character called Zoltar at various points throughout the film, who is kind of I guess from the planet Krypton. They never really established if they're on the planet Krypton or not, but he's dressed in sort of weird clothes, so we're led to believe that. So actually starring as Supergirl is an unknown actress at the time called Helen Slater. Now, that's not a very Hollywood name, Helen Slater.
It's not a name that I know particularly.
No, I mean, it sounds like someone that works down the chip shop or in the laundrette or something. The only other film that Helen Slater really would do is a film called The Legend of Billie Jean, which came out a year after this and is also quite well known in bad film circles. It's sort of a mid-80s retelling of Joan of Arc, so that's really the only other thing she did apart from Supergirl. Yeah, we do start off on the planet Krypton, I believe, with Zoltar, Peter O'Toole's character, kind of dicking about with a magic wand, a sort of shiny ball. There's mentions straight away of an Omega Hedron and some 6th dimensional geometry.
Yeah.
So Supergirl, she's like any other kind of teenage girl. She doesn't want to do her 6th dimensional geometry homework. One of the characters describes Zoltar as just making lots of airy, glittery stuff. A great bit of screenwriting there. And he basically gives her this Omega Hedron, and she starts dicking about with it as well, and ends up kind of getting sucked out of this planet inside a ball sphere, going through space, a sort of psychedelic time travel. I'm not really sure what was happening here. What was happening, Mark?
I have no idea. The main thing I thought was that this seemed to belong in the 70s more than the 80s, though. It definitely made me think of more of like a 70s.
It was quite misty.
Yeah.
Misty screened. And
kind of,
I know that maybe that's the case on Krypton, but...
not a million miles away from like Zardoz or something like that, or Silent Running or something like that.
I thought of Zardoz a few times during this film, and I'm sure our listeners will be familiar with Zardoz. There was definitely that 70s kind of hippie-ish chic to the alien people, the Krypton people, and Supergirl does get shot straight from Krypton in a little ball. She does appear on Earth out of the sky and falls into the lap of Nigel and Selena, who initially you kind of led to believe are New Age hippies who are talking about magic and spells and stuff like that. And throughout the film they kind of grow more and more malevolent, and witchcraft is introduced and Satanism in parts. I thought these characters would probably be throwaway initially, but they turned out to be kind of the villains for the rest of the film. Supergirl, obviously in any film like this, the superhero finds themselves in a normal setting and then they discover their kind of powers, and that's when she discovers that she can fly. She just looked like she was off her tits in this part. She was flying about, throwing shapes, doing a bit of ballet, interpretive dance.
A very extensive scene of just gliding around aimlessly to just show off her power.
I think she was, calibrating her flying skills that perhaps she'd never used before. But it was a ridiculous scene, and she did. It looked quite druggy. She looked like she was on some sort of trip here when she was discovering to fly. And then you're thrown straight then into your first kind of example of exactly what you would expect is the character flying in front of a green screen showing mountains, cityscape, rivers, terrain, all that stuff that obviously was done very extensively in the Christopher Reeve Superman films. After this we do start to find a little bit more about Selena and Nigel characters, and we start to sort of learn that they're not just kind of hippies, more sort of witches, or at least Selena's character is a witch, and her and her little sidekick sort of live in a ghost train in an abandoned fairground, which took me a long time to realise that that's what it was. You think initially it's just some awful set from the 30s that they rented, but it's actually meant to be a cheesy looking ghost train. You get the idea then that she's actually well into witchcraft. She's reading all sorts of books about that, and now she's come into possession of the Omega Hedron, although she doesn't know what it is yet, but she's got that and Supergirl is without it, and that's the kind of the central plot to this film. If there is a plot, there's not much of a plot.
Crux of the whole film, basically.
It's a very small point to base the whole film around, and it wasn't clear why Supergirl came to Earth, what she was going to do when she got there. It didn't seem that bothered that she'd ended up on Earth. She just kind of carried on normally. Didn't seem that bothered that the Omega Hedron had fallen into the hands of Selena. She just goes about her business, becomes a schoolgirl, just joins an all-girls school. One of her powers, we learn at this point, is the sort of power of disguise. In an instant, like, she'll walk behind a tree and then she'll be wearing one outfit, she passes through another tree, she's wearing another outfit. She goes about 4 outfits and she comes out the other side as a schoolgirl, and she, of course she's got dark hair when originally she was blonde. That's just how nobody knows who she is. Like Clark Kent wears glasses, Superman doesn't. This is maybe a bit more effort. It's a blonde girl and a dark haired girl.
There's a sort of a Kaiser Soze moment where the teacher asks her what her name is, and it zooms in on General Robert E. Lee, and she goes, Linda Lee.
Yeah, this was a really funny crash zoom. Interestingly, the director of this film, the only other thing he really directed was Jaws 2. So maybe he picked up a bit of crash zoom from his work on Jaws. Jaws 2, not the worst Jaws sequel, but it's up there. And we'll get to those on another show, I'm sure. But this was his experience I felt he brought to this film, was the old crash zoom. And she's asked what her name is, has to think fast. Not that fast, it's for Supergirl, but it zooms in on General Robert Lee, so she says Linda Lee, and it was a big laugh. And I'm sure if we were seeing this with an audience, they would have all pissed themselves. It was a good moment. So then the teacher goes out of the room and she decides she needs to do some forgery so that she appears to be a student in this school. So then we see obviously the power of moving really fast. We've seen Superman do in the past. She uses the power of her lightning speed to forge papers to say that she should be in the school. But this teacher is really funny, mainly because he keeps making fun of her for being an orphan.
Yeah.
Which was amazing. She reveals to him that she is an orphan, and he says, well, we're all alone on this miserable little planet. And then it cuts straight away. It's a terrible school teacher here, but yeah, he does make friends with Lucy Lane, who, you guessed it, is the sister of Lois Lane.
Yeah.
Also not in this film. Nobody wants to be in this film. So yeah, we start to go through school life with Linda Lee, aka Supergirl, learning to be a normal girl in school, just learning mathematics problems. All the while, Selina is sort of stalking her near the school, trying to figure out where this hedron come from, how to use it. And then, of course, Linda Lee is also a genius student, and she works out some sort of square root of 5 million or something like that.
Predicting the population growth or something, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, something like that. She works out something that's impossible, basically, and the teacher is shocked. The excuse that her friend Lucy gives is that, well, we've had some crazy weather lately, and you know how that can make you smart sometimes. And the teacher just looks at him like, you what?
Does that mean?
At which point Linda points out, well, I thought I was never that good at 6th dimensional geometry. Now I am. So there you go.
What a revelation.
Yeah. 6th dimensional geometry on Krypton is like really impressive maths in this country. We see the usual sort of school montages of sports and pranks in the shower. It all gets a bit like Porky's kind of teen high school romp.
A hockey ball smashes on her back.
Yeah, I wrote down one of her powers here was a back of steel. She can take a baseball full pelt to the back and she's fine. She's got ultra hearing. She can hear people whispering through the corridors as well, through the showers. So all kinds of powers that are getting rolled out one after the other, which I thought was quite fun. I didn't know whether Superman had any of these powers necessarily. I assume so. It's much more fun when you're in school, I suppose, to have superpowers. So yeah, we do cut back and forth between Supergirl going to school and Selina living in a little ghost train trying to figure out how to harness the immense power of the Omega Hedron. Nigel turns up because he's been kind of kicked to the curb by Selina here. He turns up at the ghost train because he wants to sort of help, be involved with this thing. He's wearing sort of a wetsuit, sort of a leather kind of bike one piece.
Yeah.
And she answers the door and is like, what are you wearing? And he's like, I've got a few days off work, okay? I'm wearing my leisure suit. And you don't even see him full length, and he doesn't wear it again, so I don't know what this was about. It was like a leather turtleneck, from what we can see, and he just said this is his leisure suit, it's what he likes to wear on his time off, which maybe hinted at something else that he was into. But we do then get introduced to the kind of the hunk of the film, which is the blue-collar kind of landscape gardener, thick New York accent called Ethan, which I wasn't ready for either. Ethan is the landscape gardener here, and Selina sort of fancies a bit of that, so she crafts a love potion by putting a spider inside a chestnut.
That was weird.
That's how you get people to fall in love with you.
Something else I didn't really understand.
Yeah. If anyone listening, you want to cast a love potion, pop a spider in a chestnut. It all started to go a bit mad by this point, but one of the weirdest scenes in the film, I've just written down JCB madness.
Yeah.
Because there's this quite expensive looking set piece where Linda and her friends are having food at a diner, and just like a big bulldozer goes on a rampage throughout the little town. Ethan the gardener is sort of swallowed up in the mouth of the bulldozer, if you want to call it that, the digger part. Lucy is in the sort of cockpit at one point, but she's knocked out. This thing's just tearing around the town. Things are catching on fire. It's escalated quickly. What was going on here, Mark?
I have no idea. It just sort of got swallowed by this cherry picker thing. Buildings got smashed up and set on fire, and it did seem quite extravagant considering I didn't really know what was going on or why this was happening.
Sort of. Yeah, I suppose it's the equivalent today would be like a monster smashing up a skyscraper, or a superhero getting thrown through a building. This was a little bit more low budget. This was a digger driving quite recklessly around a pedestrianised area. I think this is Selina still trying to figure out how to use the Omegahedron, and all she can do at this stage is control industrial machinery, which is not that impressive. Ethan the gardener, he is okay in the end. Linda finds him. She shows off another one of her special powers, which is improved medical diagnosis. She says, "It's okay, none of your bones are broken."
Yeah, she said, "You're going to be alright, there's no broken bones."
At a glance, she can tell if any of your bones are broken.
Yeah.
Not a very good power. But obviously he kind of comes to, and the first person he sees is her, hence the love potion is activated, and he falls in love with Linda Lee. But not with Supergirl, which is the kind of a running kind of subplot for the rest of the film, that he loves Linda Lee, the brunette girl. But who's this blonde-haired girl in blue? Get away from me! Who are you?
And Selina goes mad.
Selina goes really mad.
She's not happy.
This is where it really goes mental, and I thought that maybe the first and second act of the film, if they were sort of quite understated and not that much happening, the third act went from naught to ridiculous in under 60 seconds, as a lot of bad movies do. They get to the third act and go, shit, we better go crazy, and we better make this villain take over the world, because up until this point the stakes are not high at all. Supergirl's quite happy going to school, Selina's pottering about with love potions, and then all of a sudden she's cracked the Omegahedron, and all of a sudden she's taken over the world. A giant mountain with a castle on top appears near to the town for no apparent reason,
and they're essentially fighting over Ethan.
Yes. Yes, in a lovely twist on other kind of films, it is the man that is being objectified and squabbled over, and it doesn't have anything useful to say at all. It's all about the women in this film, which is one of the better things about it, I think. All the leads are female. The men don't have anything to do. Ethan is just eye candy, and I think that's is nice for a change.
All he says is like some really cheesy romantic stuff to Linda.
Yeah, pre-love potion, he's like an idiot.
Yeah.
He goes, I came over to fix the plants. You ain't got no plants in this ghost train. And then as soon as he has a love potion, he's sort of Wordsworth and quoting sonnets and stuff like that, and has become quite an intelligent guy. So it wasn't really just a love potion, it was sort of an intelligence potion as well.
Yeah.
He ended up becoming the prince of the world. When Selina was taking over the world, he started wearing a kind of velvet suit and ruffled sort of shirt and medallion. Yeah. He, like you say, very 70s. He was from the 70s, definitely. Especially as the film wore on. He was a Saturday Night Fever type character, and he became the prince. And like you say, they were squabbling over a man here. That was pretty much what it was. Although she was taking over the world as well. She had raised some sort of private army, which was people in sort of motorcycle helmets with big sticks that were just battering the students. It got all dystopian for a little bit.
Yeah,
this was in 1984. The year 1984, perhaps they thought they'd put a reference in there, but for a time there were black-clad men in motorcycle helmets beating the shit out of students with sticks.
Yeah,
only for like one scene. But I thought, this is maybe a more interesting film, but they didn't go on with that. It all kicks off. There's a confrontation in the fairground where Selina is able to control the waltzers telekinetically, and she's also able to control the bumper cars in order to try and kill Ethan. I thought that was quite a good scene, making good use of the fairground setting. At one point she does say she is the Siren of Endor. So I thought Ewoks were going to start running out from behind her. It was one of her titles that she gave herself. I think a lot of this film's budget was wind machines.
Yes.
Any scene where Selina is sort of shouting, her hair becomes the most massive backlit 80s mop and this is where it did look 80s, any sort of dramatic line had to be backed up with intense wind and hairspray.
Yeah.
Also true of Supergirl, but not as much. So it goes to show big hair is evil. But something they also start using for no apparent reason is something that Nigel refers to as a Burundi wand, which I thought for sure was a euphemism. A massive monster to fight Supergirl as well. And this looked terrible.
Yeah.
The monster looked terrible, and when Supergirl tried to fight it, they tried to superimpose Supergirl onto this monster. It went so wrong. The aspect ratio, she was stretched out or squished up. You could see the monster's hands in the background, and it was like, what is this? This is awful. And the effects in the film weren't even that bad up until this point. They'd just been what you would expect of the time. But this beggared belief that how they could mess up this optical illusion.
You just had to laugh out loud, basically.
Why even bother? Like, there was no need to have a giant monster in it. It's not the kind of film that needs a giant monster anyway. It was fine as it was. So I thought that was stupid, and it made the special effects team look really garbage as a result.
We missed a bit where they land on the beach and Selena smacks Ethan in the head with a coconut.
Yeah.
That was quite funny.
So she goes back and forth with how powerful she is. Like she says, I can make coconuts rain down from the sky with precision, but I still can't take over the world.
Yeah.
And that's her main problem here, And then again, this is where Ethan sort of is confused. It's like, I want Linda. You're not Linda, You've got blonde hair. You can't be Linda. And then he kisses her and he's like, Linda. he recognises her then. Yeah, this just it all gets really out of control, really out of hand. She ends up being banished to the...
Phantom Zone?
Yes, she ends up being banished to the Phantom Zone. This is so unnecessary.
Yeah.
Just left the planet briefly to end up on another planet where she could meet Zoltar again, who has been languishing in this Phantom Zone, spraying something into his mouth and offering it to Supergirl. I'm going to have a squirt. Do you want a squirt? Who's writing this?
I got totally lost here. I was like, what? Why is this happening? What's going on?
I thought this was drugs again, maybe. He was just squirting this thing into his mouth. He's like, it's not so bad after a while. So it's drugs then. It's like heroin. It's LSD or something. He's like, here, have a squirt, you'll feel better. You what? But then he eventually figures out a loophole so she can return to Earth. All of this takes about 6 minutes. It didn't need to happen. I don't know if they were playing for time. It already felt like it should have ended. But then she does eventually land back on Earth. Defeats Selena. That's kind of it, I think. What were your overall thoughts on Supergirl? Anything?
It was very tacky, very cheesy. It did make me laugh quite a number of times, though. There were some really good lines. I liked the teacher when he was his lines about her being an orphan. And
he was in a comedy, and he knew he was.
Yeah.
Not everyone did.
And some other lines like, the way to a woman's heart is through the elimination of her rivals. I was like, interesting.
Yeah.
I think the ending was just so dragged out. It just felt like they were
playing for time somehow. I don't know why, but it could have ended several times before it did, and it was didn't feel like much of a conclusion at the end then.
Elongated with all these kind of strange scenes with random things happening.
Yeah. I think there's quite a variety of kind of acting here. I think Helen Slater, for what it's worth, did a pretty good job as Supergirl, trying to play it as straight as she could. And it's not easy to play that character who has to, be the kind of alien who's on Earth and go, what is this metal thing that you drive around in? The fish out of water thing that some films do it awfully. And I thought she was quite good at pretending not to know about Earth's customs and stuff like that. She played it quite well and quite straight, but Faye Dunaway was so over the top, and every scene she was in, she was chewing the scenery. She was pantomime villain, and that was also quite fun. So I don't know, it was a film of two halves really. I sort of enjoyed both aspects of it, but again, the stakes weren't high enough until right at the end when she was taking over the world.
Yeah.
And then she was fairly easily defeated.
The rest of the film, she was just wanted to control people.
Yeah. She was kind of a weak villain, really, and that's kind of a theme for both of these films. Didn't do very well, as you can imagine. It kind of set back any kind of hope of any more female kind of leads in a superhero film for quite a while.
20 years, I'd say.
20 years is about right, yes. So the next film we're going to get into here is a film which probably a lot of you have seen. One of the more recent films that we've reviewed so far on the podcast, which is Catwoman from 2004. Not that long ago at all. What were your first impressions of Catwoman? I don't know if you saw it at the time when it came out. Was this your first time watching it?
No, I'd never seen it. I was well aware of it.
Yeah.
I'd obviously seen the poster of Halle Berry wearing a cat mask.
Yeah.
I kind of got the impression early on that I wouldn't care about any of the characters. And as the film went on...
How early on?
I just sort of felt like none of the characters had any real depth or interest to them.
I mean, I think it's worth noting that obviously Supergirl from 1984 was really what you could consider the first wave of superhero movies, with Superman films from the 70s and 80s, Batman films from the 80s, and even some Spider-Man and Incredible Hulk stuff that was happening in the 70s and 80s. That's really when people started to adapt comic book and superhero characters for the film. Now, if that was the first wave, then certainly the second wave does come in the early 2000s with stuff like Spider-Man, Sam Raimi's version, the Incredible Hulk, Ang Lee's version, the X-Men films, of which Halle Berry was a part.
Yeah.
And then Catwoman here in 2004, kind of riding that second wave, that popularity. They thought, well, why not? Let's spin off Catwoman, who had already been portrayed in Tim Burton's Batman Returns, but they thought, let's spin it off here for another go, and let's make a full-blown version out of it, to mixed results. But like you say there, you remember Halle Berry because she was a huge star. She had won an Oscar in 2001 for her performance in Monsters Ball, and like many actors that we'll probably review in the future on this show that have won an Oscar, she immediately let it go to shit.
Yeah.
Much in the same way as Nicolas Cage, Liam Neeson, I'm looking at you. In the space of 3 years since winning the Oscar, she did Die Another Day, Gothica, and Catwoman.
Three rubbish films.
What a triple of three of the worst films you'll ever see. And she's not a bad actor at all. She just won an Oscar. She's a good actor, but she does some horrendous films for whatever reason. And before we get into the film, what I would really recommend people watch, Halle Berry won the Razzie Award for Worst Actress for Catwoman 3 years after she won the Oscar for Best Actress for Monsters Ball. And if you look on YouTube, she actually went to the Razzies to accept the award for Worst Actress.
Wow.
Clutching her Oscar in one hand and the Golden Razzie in the other, and she gives this whole acceptance speech which is tongue-in-cheek at parts and very close to the bone in other parts.
Yeah.
She makes a whole big joke out of being put in this terrible film and that she had terrible actors to work with, but there's a lot of truth in it. And yeah, I would recommend people look that up because there's a fascinating lot of backstory to this film. But let's get into the film itself here, which you all want to hear us talk about. So in Catwoman, Halle Berry plays a character called Patience Phillips. Not Selena Kyle, who you may remember is the actual real name of Catwoman in every other form of media. They thought, Patience Phillips will call this Catwoman. So it's one of these films where at the beginning, she dies at the beginning of the film, you know. How did I get here, you're probably wondering. One of these kind of wonder years opens to a film where she says, I didn't really start living until I died. You're like, oh,
Jeezy.
I wonder how she died.
Yeah.
Let's find out. So she's portraying a kind of a struggling graphic artist type character. They've tried to make her look plain and frumpy as much as you can make Halle Berry look plain and not that good looking, but it doesn't really work. She just wears lots of really baggy jumpers and she's working as a graphic designer, but for a sort of beauty company, an evil beauty company, which is
evil.
Yeah, which is again a common theme in these two films. The stakes are just not high enough. The evil villain in this film is the CEO of a beauty company who is selling makeup that might give you some spots and a rash. That's the stakes here. So we're introduced to George Hedare of the Hedare cosmetic and beauty empire. We sort of initially think that he's going to be the kind of the villain, but then Sharon Stone cuts right in front of him. Laurel Hedare, and straight away makes quite an impression. I've got to know, Mark, what were your thoughts on Sharon Stone's performance in this film straight off the bat?
Interesting.
She was awful.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. As soon as she gets on the screen, she's like, again, chewing up the scenery, pantomime villain, where nobody else is doing this in the film. Her husband talks about, yes, this is the new model for our new campaign, and then she sort of goes,
steals his thunder.
Yeah, I hope you're not going to be taking her out to dinner, ha 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 ha, like that. And then it's the kind of base soap opera, beyond wooden pantomime acting that Sharon Stone carries throughout this film. And I've got to say, if this film is a failure, it's mostly because of Sharon Stone, and she'll pop up a few times here in her performances. Laurel used to be the face of the beauty company, but now she was getting a bit old, and she'd been replaced with a younger model. And obviously she's quite bitter and jealous about this. And there's a bit where she's standing in the foyer talking on the telephone. 2 removal men walk past her carrying a giant picture of her as it's being chucked out, basically. And as they walk past her, she disappears from the shot after she walks past, as if to suggest her fading beauty or importance in this company. Patience then, she's in her apartment, and she tries to rescue a cat from outside the apartment, and then we're introduced to Tom, the hunky cop in this one, the love interest, who thinks she's about to throw herself off the building, and she says, no, I'm just trying to rescue a cat. And this kind of sets up the whole love interest thing for the rest of the film. And one of the worst things about this film is the music. It's so out of place and so poorly judged. It's this kind of funky R&B, porno R&B kind of elevator music. It's just so nothing, and they use it over every scene in the film pretty much, no matter how dramatic, comedic, life-threatening. It'll all have this kind of and you're like,
very of its time. Just seemed like at any point the film would just turn into a dance movie, like Step Up or something.
Yeah, no, it did have that vibe to it. Lots of that kind of urban R&B kind of playing behind it. It made it look stupid a lot of the time. Anything they were trying to get across was constantly undermined by this stupid music that would play.
When Tom was introduced, he came into the office, and Sally, Patience's best friend, was just so over the top, and it was just so cheesy, and just annoyed me.
She's playing the cliche kind of, oh my god, you have to get his number, he's such a dreamboat, extrovert to Patience's introvert, of course, and we'll see a transformation of Patience throughout the film, obviously, where she becomes much more extroverted.
I noticed about half an hour in, I realised that Sally, the actress who plays Sally, is the voice of Lois in Family Guy.
Oh, is she?
Yeah. I was like, that. Wait a minute, I recognise that voice.
She has that very nasal, quality. But, well spotted, I didn't notice that. Patience, at this point, she decides to, for whatever reason, Patience infiltrates the company late at night, and she basically overhears, privy to this sort of discussion about the beauty cream that they're selling, which is, quote, turning people into monsters. It can give you nausea. It can make you faint. Give you an uncomfortable rash on the side of your face. And the scientist he's having a moral dilemma. It's not what I signed up for. I don't want to turn people into monsters.
This was just kind of showing their kind of corruption, how they would do anything for money kind of thing.
Yeah, it was...
Get people addicted to it and everything.
This was obviously the writer and director's little pop at the beauty industry, like, you profit off of people's insecurity and discomfort, you monsters. This is a kind of a very ham-fisted, metaphorical kind of thing they were going for, satirical pop they were having, but...
Paul Verhoeven wannabe.
yeah. It didn't really go off too well. Obviously, Patience gives the game away. She knocks something over, and she's chased out of the building by security guards. Eagle-eyed listeners here may have spotted that one of the security guards is played by a guy called Byron Mann, who has to be considered a little bit of a legend in the bad movie field, because he played Ryu in Street Fighter the movie, which we love and we will review at some point. So yeah, Ryu himself, and actually if you look on his IMDb, he's done loads of stuff, mainly as a henchman. He never again reached the heights of Ryu, but Byron Mann plays one of these henchmen, and the other guy, I also looked up his IMDb. He's actually been in Spider-Man films. He's been in The Crow. He's been a henchman in everything. So these two henchmen here are the creme de la creme of henchmen. They've been around, but yeah, I was particularly impressed by Ryu from Street Fighter the movie here, who even had a couple of lines as he was chasing them down. Evil Laurel orders them to flush her out, basically, and she ends up drowning. So you remember at the beginning of the movie when she said she was dying? This is it. It doesn't take that long. Makes you wonder why they bothered. But yeah, she drowns. I think this is our first look at some of the most hideous CGI I've ever seen in my life. Less noticeable on the cats than it is later in the film. But we start to see a horde of CGI cats gather around her. And one cat in particular gives her the kiss of life and breathes a kind of a misty essence into her, and that turns her into Catwoman.
It's a pretty underwhelming scene.
Yeah, it is. Most superheroes undergo quite a bit of turmoil in order to become a superhero. Usually involving something radioactive or some sort of tragedy involving their parents. Catwoman gets kissed by a cat. Well, we find out later it's no ordinary cat, but nonetheless, at this point, it's a gang of cats that revive her, and as he breathes the essence into her eye turns into a cat eye.
Yeah.
If you didn't know by now, yes, she is Catwoman. She's got the eye of a cat. So at this point, she starts hallucinating on this kind of muddy shore. Things start jumping out at her. Now, I was a bit concerned, Mark, for you, because at this point, she sort of gets attacked by a seagull. And I know you've recently had a run-in yourself with a seagull. In fact, you were mugged for your Greg's pasty, isn't that right?
That is correct, yeah.
Yeah. Did you get horrible flashbacks here during this sequence?
I did, yeah. I thought I was having like PTSD kind of flashbacks.
Yeah. Luckily the seagull wasn't that convincing either, as it was also shitty CGI, which, how hard is it to get footage of a seagull? CGI seagulls, CGI cats, probably some other CGI bullshit here, but this is how Catwoman becomes Catwoman, and she returns to her apartment, and we get introduced to her superpowers that she's acquired. Not as impressive as Supergirl's superpowers.
She just jumps high.
She can jump on a table. She can sleep on a shelf. So these are her main powers. The power of a cat. Very unimpressive. At this point, you're thinking, what kind of superhero is this going to be? Obviously, she eventually is reintroduced to the cat who brought her back to life and takes it back to where it lives, and meets a crazy cat lady. She reveals that this cat is called Midnight, and it's got special Egyptian powers. You know, you underestimate the cat, but the cat have been worshipped throughout history, and there's even there's a montage at the beginning of the film showing the cat cults of Egypt and how there have been cat women all through history. Women have been infused with the power of a cat, and it is these ancient mystical Egyptian powers that have made her the way that she is now. Understandably, she thinks this is a load of bullshit and says, well, I've brought your cat back, I'm going out now. And this is a scene that people probably have seen quite a lot. The woman takes something out of a box, throws it at her. She rubs this object all over her face, and the crazy cat lady says, catnip. Ridiculous. Yeah. Ridiculous. So this is another one of her special powers. She likes catnip. This is the confusion of this film. She doesn't have the powers of a cat. She just does some things that cats do.
Yeah.
That aren't that useful. Slowly but surely, she starts to realise her power. She becomes a bit more cocky in her job. A lot of her superpowers manifest as she was shy, but now she's quite outgoing.
She stands up to her boss, and gets fired in front of everyone, and everyone cheers for her because they're like, she expresses the opinion that everyone else wants to say about him. That he's
it's quite a typical kind of sassy 90s movie kind of cliche.
Yeah,
he tells her off, and she says, sorry," and then she rethinks it and she goes, hang on, this is the Sorry remix. And then she says, sorry, I worked for you, you're such an arsehole, etc., etc. But she tilts her head and she goes, "This is this remix." Oh, it's just daft. Really does. So daft, so cheesy. Not even Halle Berry can kind of get away with this bollocks. But she's still getting on with Tom the cop pretty well. They share a kind of a heated basketball game.
Very pointless scene, other than to bring those two characters together. But
well, it also shows one of her other powers. She's now really good at basketball.
Yeah,
which cats are known for.
Yeah, be very useful throughout the rest of the film, I'm sure.
Basketball scene had been set to the strains of Scandalous by Mystique, which very firmly dates it. Probably dates it a bit earlier than 2004, if I'm honest. But yeah, so we go from so scandalous. She starts to get more confident, but she now puts on the leather outfit and she goes out and she ends up interrupting a robbery at a local kind of museum or an art gallery. You get a little makeover montage. You know, she cuts her hair short, she puts on some makeup, she puts on some leather.
This is the first proper action in the film, really.
Yeah,
when she's taking on these thieves.
Yeah, again, it's some very sort of ham-fisted woman discovering who she is and becoming strong and confident. At one point she says, "That's a perfect idea." Oh God, you know, I could forgive other lines, but that wasn't the only line like that. But a perfect idea was one of them.
Yeah.
So she interrupts the robbery, and this is her becoming the crime-fighting kind of character, similar to Batman. The next morning they're sort of picking up after it, and then we see the kind of irony that Tom the cop is actually the cop that's on the case.
Yeah.
To find out who this person is that is the woman that he's actually dating. So there's that kind of double identity idea there. There were some reporters at the scene the next day, and they're trying to come up with names for her. I don't know if you caught this. It was just in the background, but I heard it. They said, "What do we call her? Cat Chick? Cat Broad?"
Oh, yeah, I did catch that.
That's amazing. We learn more and more that actually Midnight, this cat, is not a normal cat. It's immortal. It's diabolical. And we get this kind of this montage of all these old paintings of historical figures that have a cat in the picture.
Yeah.
And every time it's this same cat, this cat who has lived forever, has traditionally turned women in history into cat women. So there's the hint here that perhaps strong women in history have actually been cat women themselves. Maybe Boudica, Joan of Arc, Isabella, Catherine the Great. Perhaps these were all cat women too. So it's this kind of rewriting of history that cats have actually been behind everything. So again, we get more scenes here with Sharon Stone. I've just written Sharon Stone is awful because it's the truth. She's just the worst. There's interspersed scenes of Laurel and her husband squabbling, hit each other, they fight, they threaten to kill each other. Yeah, you're set up here for some, obviously someone's going to come out on top here and win this sort of power struggle. You realise that's going to be Laurel. Sharon Stone here is going to get her way. There is actually a bit where Patience wakes up and she's receiving a call on her Nokia, whatever the popular Nokia was in 2004, and she picks it up and she's sort of getting a FaceTime call from Sharon Stone. I'm pretty sure there wasn't that technology there in 2004, and it looks terrible. FaceTime on a Nokia in 2004, quite an anachronism. Catwoman was trying to prevent this evil cosmetics company from releasing this new product which is going to melt people's faces off, and in the course of trying to intervene, she ends up getting framed for the murder of the head of that company, which allows Laurel to swoop in and take over it all.
And all the evidence is against Catwoman.
It is. The evidence is against Catwoman, and it's at this point that Tom realises, oh no, Catwoman is Patience. I've been dating Catwoman. One of those colleagues says to him, well, you've lost your woman, but you've got your man. What? It's awful. Leaves the path clear for Sharon Stone to be releasing this deadly product on the public, but she manages to escape, and she goes to confront Laurel Adair. Really quite a hilarious fight sequence here at the top of a skyscraper. They're scrapping with each other amongst massive photos of Sharon Stone in the background. She's getting thrown through photographs of herself, again in some sort of ham-fisted irony. And then it's revealed that Sharon Stone, because she's used so much makeup, has become invincible. Because, I quote, "If you stop using it, your face will disintegrate. But if you keep using it, you'll be like marble." So Catwoman punches her in the face and it doesn't do anything because she's got so much makeup on and she's had so much beauty cream over the years that she has now become like the Man of Steel, the Woman of Steel here. It's like Supergirl again, but Sharon Stone. I mean, this is just such a leap of the imagination. So late in the film, it's like, okay, this is just an evil villain, evil head of a corporation. You get these in lots of films. And then, oh, she's actually a supervillain because she's invincible. There's this line, you know, I'm a woman. I'm used to doing all the things I don't want to do. I don't know what that was a reference to, but again, these clumsy lines here are very funny. Eventually, Catwoman prevails on Sharon Stone, and she plummets out of the skyscraper. Not bad enough that she's plummeted from a skyscraper, but she also looks a bit ropey now.
Yeah,
she's her beauty has worn off. She's not invincible anymore. Her beauty cream has not helped her. She's aged and she looks kind of the same, just with a little bit of like a bruise on her face. But to her, that's terrible. So Catwoman has prevailed over the cosmetics supervillain Sharon Stone. Catwoman obviously gets with Tom the cop, and they live happily ever after, as far as I could tell. So there you go. Catwoman, what were your overall thoughts on Catwoman, man?
Oh, it was so cheesy. The film is like a 2,000-year-old piece of Stilton.
I like the sound of that. I would enjoy that a lot more than this film.
So cheesy.
It's not even as fun, though, is it, as some bad films? It's slow and it drags and it grinds you down, I feel.
Supergirl, I could laugh at. This, I just was like, oh. It's a terrible cheesy dialogue.
Yeah. Poor
direction. Terrible acting. Well, some of the acting was okay, but Sharon Stone was awful. I said interesting earlier. I meant awful.
It's okay. I don't think she's listening.
I meant interesting and ironical.
So if you are listening, Sharon Stone, sorry, but you know it's true.
Point out some of the cheesy lines. There was a bit when she got arrested and they said, "You be a nice kitty now." And
she went, meow.
One bit where she was at the bar. There was a bar scene sort of halfway through.
Yeah.
And she said, "White Russian, no ice, hold the vodka, hold the Kahlua." So she basically ordered milk.
Oh, milk.
Yeah.
A glass. Okay, so it's
glass of milk.
Right,
right. Trying to be clever with the dialogue there.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
Too clever for this film.
Yeah. So there's just a couple of quotes that I thought I'd chuck in there as well that were cheesy.
Yeah.
I guess I enjoyed it from an ironic perspective, but it wasn't a good film. It wasn't genuinely enjoyable. There wasn't any gripping plot points, or it was just cheesy and pretty poor.
Yeah.
Brilliantly poor.
So out of these two films, if you had to banish one of these to some sort of phantom zone on another planet, which one would you banish and which one would you keep?
I think I'd keep Supergirl.
Yeah, I agree. Supergirl was at least fun, equally as daft as Catwoman, equally as misjudged and clumsy in the way that they kind of portrayed these characters and tried to spin them off of existing characters and existing universes. Supergirl referenced Superman a lot, and Lois Lane, and stuff that had happened. Catwoman didn't reference Batman or Gotham or that universe at all, and I'm not sure which is better or worse, to be honest. I guess it makes the Supergirl look like a bit weaker because it's kind of trying to spin it off those characters, but if you're not spinning it off a more popular film, then how can you expect anyone to really get into it and get interested in it? Surely if there were references in Catwoman to maybe Batman or Gotham or some of these other characters, that would have made for a better film. And you could have even drafted in one of the many Batman villains. I'm sure a lot of our listeners will agree kind of the strength of the Batman films and the universe are its like amazing villains. And Catwoman did not have an amazing villain. It had Sharon Stone playing this really ordinary character in many ways, and I felt like they maybe could have drawn from some villain in the Gotham universe or the DC universe that was already out there. And both of these films suffer from weak villains and very low stakes.
Yeah. Nothing
much at stake in either of these films, but I think Supergirl is much more fun. I guess it takes a while for bad movies to age. Perhaps we're just still not ready for Catwoman. It's not been long enough.
Yeah, maybe
takes a good 20 years.
Maybe it's still too fresh.
It's too soon.
The music is still lingering in our
2004 isn't that long ago to me. Maybe it is to some people, but yeah. Supergirl is the better bad film here. A lot more fun. It's aged really well. It's matured like a bad movie should. And maybe someday Catwoman will get there as well. But, so we did actually get some feedback earlier today. I did post on Twitter and Instagram at Schlock Tactics, asking people what they thought of both of these films. What a ranker. He's putting together a list, basically, of the worst films. And he says Catwoman is going to be pretty near the bottom. Who thought they could get away with those visual effects in 2004? We should talk a little bit maybe more about that. I mean, it's the scenes in which they switch from a real Halle Berry to a CGI Halle Berry that looks so dreadful. And I'm reminded of like The Scorpion King and The Mummy Returns around this similar time as well. This isn't the dawn of CGI. This is about 13 years into CGI. But there's still people who can't do it properly, apparently. You look at Terminator 2 or Jurassic Park, 2, came 12 years before this film. Amazing, seamless. The scenes in this, when Halle Berry was obviously meant to be traversing rooftops, it switches to this just ropey kind of PlayStation 2 looking character. It's so fake. The cats are so fake. There's a fake seagull. There's more fake in Catwoman than there is real. What a ranker has nailed it there. The visual effects here for 2004 are laughable. And it drags the film down a lot. Also, James Hernandez kind of sticks up for Catwoman here. He says it wasn't great, but he doesn't hate it as much as a lot of people do. It was fun to watch. He acknowledges that Catwoman's name is Selena Kyle, not Patience Phillips, but he's seen worse. I mean, I've seen worse as well, of course. I mean, and you don't have to go that far back. You can go to Batman and Robin from the mid-90s, which was a diabolical film, probably worse than Catwoman. And like I said at the beginning, there are a lot of superhero films out there featuring male leads that we could have reviewed, but they've all been reviewed already. And Batman and Robin is probably one of those that's just a hideous film set in this same universe. And that's all the time we have for feedback. But if you do ever want to let us know what you thought of these films, or ask us any questions about these films, even suggest any future films for us to review, just you can find us at Schlock Tactics on Twitter, on Instagram and on Facebook as well. We want to hear what you think of these films as well. If you did like either of these films, of course, you can check out the Superman films from the 70s and 80s that we mentioned with Christopher Reeve. They're very similar in their kind of tone and their cheesiness to Supergirl. If you like Catwoman, we just mentioned their Batman and Robin, a diabolical film from the mid-90s featuring similar characters there that you can watch. There are obviously Tim Burton's Batman films which are actually pretty good. And it's worth noting as well that Supergirl actually did eventually make a comeback and has been turned into a TV show. It's actually doing quite well.
Yeah, that'll definitely be the first thing that comes up on Google search when you type in Supergirl.
Yeah, if you're trying to find Supergirl, you'll probably find the more recent TV show which started a couple of years ago. And obviously Catwoman will make a comeback in Christopher Nolan's Batman films, played by Anne Hathaway. It was kind of a much more grounded version. Not difficult to get a much more grounded version than Patience Phillips here, but you can go check that out and let us know if there's anything else terrible superhero wise that we can review for you. So that's been another episode of Schlock Tactics. Please do give us a review on iTunes, give us a positive rating. We are a 5-star podcast in there now, and we want to keep it that way, so keep on rating us there. Do subscribe so you can get all the new episodes as soon as they become available. We will be releasing 2 every month, but that has been another episode of Schlock Tactics. My name is Ash and I've been joined by Mark. Goodbye, Mark.
Thanks for listening.
See you later, guys. Bye.
Bye.